Hello everyone and welcome to our roundup series for August 2021. Today I am accompanied by my colleague Raman. In this roundup, we will be discussing recent changes, recent news. We have updated our format a bit and we'll be discussing in detail one particular ruling. And in this roundup, the ruling would be relating to post-sale discounts. Then we'll be covering other rulings and we'll wind it up with synopsis of the discussions that we had during the roundup. Post that, there'll be live question and answer session. So over to you, Raman, to discuss recent changes.
Thank you, Deepak. Good afternoon, everyone. We will start our session with the recent changes. So first, we will discuss about the extension of limitation period. Supreme Court has extended the time limit for filing all the appeal, petition, application, suits, or all other proceedings, whether before judicial or quasi-judicial authorities. But on the same point, CBIC has issued a circular clarifying that Supreme Court extension order will apply only to appeal to be filed before commissioner appeal or AAR or tribunals or court. In other words, Supreme Court extension order will apply only to post adjudication order. So, this extension shall not be applicable to original proceedings or any other proceedings. But important to note that if we see that Supreme Court has used the word appeal, petition, application, and so it will apply to all the time limits, whether filing for reply to SCN, and whenever there is a dispute with respect to any proceeding, whether original or not, Supreme Court extension order will be applicable. Then President of SESTAT has also directed all the benches of tribunal to strictly adhere to Supreme Court extension order. But this facility shall be available to subject to a declaration by applicant. Similarly, CBDT has also issued a circular that a taxpayer will be entitled to avail the benefit of Supreme Court extension order. Now we come to another change, that is GST audit. So government has given a major relaxation to all the taxpayer, removing the condition of certification of GSTR 9C from chartered accountant. So now taxpayer can do self-certification of GSTR 9C from the financial year 2021 onwards. Important to note that government could not fulfill its promise that format to make the form of GSTR 9C more simpler. And format of 99C will continue to be same as of financial year 1920. Government has given further relaxation exempting GSTR 9C for the taxpayer having turnover less than 5 CR.
So just one point to add here, Raman, that number one, the responsibility of the taxpayers remains same. Because the forms are same, they are still responsible to provide all the details that were required earlier. In fact, the responsibility increases since there will be no certification by the auditor. So if there is any mistake, the department would say that the assessee has malafidely declared the particulars wrongly, so as to take the benefit to defraud the taxpayers. Secondly, it is also very important to note, and in our experience, that during this audit exercises, some ITC claimed an incorrect head, not claimed, etc. came to light. And similarly, some adjustments of tax liabilities incorrectly done, or let us say, which are needed to be done, came to light. So in earlier years, the time limit of 30th September had passed, and there was no opportunity for the taxpayers to conduct this audit timely. But now there is. So taxpayers should consider that while the due date of this GSTR 9 and 9C for financial year 2021 is 31st December, they should target that at least with the adjustment parts or taking adjustments in the return, they have an internal target of September 30th, so that while they file the GSTR 3B of September, they are able to make those corrections. And then they proceed with filing of GSTR 9 and 9C by 31st December if required.
Right, yes. Thank you, Deepak. So now we are seeing that all the taxpayer across all the industry receiving notices from the department on account of reason of differences between GSTR 1 and 3B and ITC availing 3B as compared to ITC available in 2A or 2B. But Haryana GST Intelligence Unit has advised taxpayer to make one more reconciliation, that is liability declared in EWA bill and liability paid in GSTR 3B. So this is not required under GST law. And department has asked something which is not in their jurisdiction. So if any taxpayer receive this notice, we can definitely he can challenge the validity of the said notice.
Again here, adding Raman, in our experience, department has been very aggressive with these reconciliations. So while legally e-way bill versus 3-way is not required, GST 3-way versus 2-way also there is a limit of 5%, and earlier it was 10%, which has been provided under Rule 36(4). Those are there. But seeing the aggression of the department and the powers that they have, that they can block the ITC, they can suspend registration without giving any notice. So the taxpayers should have a mechanism in place to keep all these reconciliations with them, and at the back end, ensure that the system proper controls are there, and if required, provide a suitable legal reply or these reconciliations depending upon the facts that, to the department.
Yes, right. Now we come to customs changes. So there was a confusion on which value importer is required to pay custom duty on re-imported goods sent for repair. So government came up with a notification stating that the duty of custom is required to be paid on cost of repair, insurance and freight cost. But ruling in the case of Interglobe Aviation, Sestet Delhi has held that duty of custom will not include the levy of IGST and compensation cess. So in other words, importer is not required to pay any IGST or cess even on the cost of repair, insurance and freight cost. But to nullify the effect of this judgment, government has revised the notification and substituted the phrase duty of custom with the said duty, tax or cess. Now importer is required to pay IGST and cess also on the cost of repair, but this substitution is not a clarificatory. This is a new levy, and accordingly it will apply prospectively. Now we come to other custom changes. So person holding AEO certificate gets certain benefit like facility of 24/7 clearance, facility of direct port delivery, direct port entry, furnishing 50% less guarantee and other benefits. But the validity of AEO certificate for Tier 1 entity remain 3 years. So after that, such person is required to submit an application for its renewal. But now government has removed that condition, removed that requirement, and it will get auto renewed. But this will be subject to submission of a self-declaration annual form between October 1st to December 31st every year. Recently, government introduced a portal for submission and issuance of certificate of origin online. But due to COVID, government has given a facility to issue certificate of origin manually as well till September 30th, 2021. This is something additional requirement that government has introduced on importer and exporter to update their IC detail every year on the portal. And the due date is June 30th every year. And if someone does not update the detail of IC, then he will not be, then after June 30th, he will not be able to import or export the goods until he updates the detail. But due to COVID, government extended the due date from June 30th to July 31. And now government has again extended the due date up to August 31 with no late fees. Then we come to another section, next section of recent news. So government has invited suggestion from importer and exporter for custom duty exemptions, and any importer or exporter can submit their suggestion on portal up to August 20th. As we know that Kerala Flusses was introduced with effect from August 1, 2019 with an objective to collect 2,000 crore on account of the same. So now government has collected the said amount and now it comes to an end. So effectively there will be no cess on any sale made after July 31st. Union Cabinet has recently approved the PLI scheme for specialty steel. It shall be available for a period of 5 years and from a financial year 23-24. This is an important news. Like we know that Authority for Advanced Ruling of different states have been pronouncing contradictory ruling on complex issue like status of a support service given by licensing office to head office or inclusion of discount in value of supply by company to its dealers. So now Center has begun review of all those legal issues to bring uniformity and clarity. This is also important, bidder were filing railway tender, adopting HSN classification, attracting lower rate of tax to get the tender. But now DGCI is investigating all those tender to crack down the evasion of misclassification of rail supplies. Now, government has accepted that three rate structure is important for India, and progress will be seen soon. And it will also curb the problem of inverted duty structure. And last news is that many individuals and corporate are getting notices from indirect tax department, because department noticed that there is a discrepancy between their income tax return filings and other tax filings. So now I request Deepak to take the session forward.
Right. So thank you, Raman, and very interesting news and changes. So in news, one of the news which Raman shared was review of the legal positions and how the advanced ruling authorities are impacting the business and creating problem for the business. So one similar thing is vis-a-vis the post-sale discounts. So what we'll be doing is we'll be briefing the transaction to you. Then we'll be stating what development vis-a-vis the law is. And then we'll share the recent advanced ruling in case of Santosh Distributors, what they have said. So usually the transaction happens at manufacturer. Let us say he sells the goods to distributor at rupees 900. The distributor, he expects that he will earn a margin of 10% or he'll be selling the goods at rupees 1000. However, due to slowdown, due to various reasons, the sale price, or even due to competition, the sale price which he's able to fetch is at, let us say, 850. So what happens is that the manufacturer tells the distributor, you sell the goods at 850 and I reimburse you this differential 150 to you. So what he does is he gives a discount, a commercial credit note to the distributor of 150 rupees. In this transaction, till now, no one had a confusion. GST was paid on 850 rupees. GST was paid on 900 rupees. There was one doubt that on 150, GST credit note can be issued, cannot be issued. But that was it. There was no confusion per se on this case. However, recently 2 points which are coming forth in this discussion is, number one, if let us say manufacturer wishes to issue a GST credit note, whether he can validly do so or not. Second, and more importantly, if distributor, when he's selling the goods to dealer at 850 rupees and he's getting commercial credit note of 150 rupees, then is he liable to pay GST on 850 or on 1000? And quite frankly, in my mind, there was no confusion that GST should be paid at 850 only. However, I think we posed a question to our audience that what do you think, on what value should the GST be paid? And audience being a well-read one, they said that 65% of them said that yes, this value should be included in the value of supply and GST should be paid on 1000 rupees. So just to share in this slide, the audience is of the view that GST should be paid on 1000. So we do have an element of surprise or an updation for you guys or our friends that this value, whether it should be 1000, what the thought of the government or the GST council is, and other updates on this. So just to share with you the industry practice, the practice which we diagrammatically presented is that the company supply goods to distributors at a fixed price. In the example 900. They supply the goods, distributors supply the goods at discounted price. In the above example 850. Company reimburses the discounts, the 150 rupee discounts via credit notes. And the distributors, they also discharge GST at a discounted price of 850. How this confusion started is, in 2019, CBIC issued a circular and said that when a discount is offered, compensating the reduction of price. So in the above example, when he decided to reduce this price from 1000 to 850, there is a reduction in price and that is compensated by the company. The circular said that it should be considered as an additional consideration and it should be included in the value of supply. This created ripples across the industry because no dealer, retailer is adding this value which he's getting from his principal in the value of supply. The news reached the GST Council again that this circular, it seems incorrect. What is the purpose behind it? This circular was withdrawn. After withdrawal, there's actually a detailed discussion in the GST Council that what was the purpose of this circular. They stated that if, let us say, a third party who's independent, he gives the consideration, he gives a voucher, because of which the customer is required to pay a discounted price only. So in the above example, let us say the customer pays 850 rupees and 150 rupees is support price given by a third party. Then the transaction value should be 1000, tax should be paid on 1000. But the council meeting states that in this case, wherein the supplier is issuing, that was never the intent to include this value. In fact, they have provided for a draft circular. The draft circular categorically states that in these cases, value should not be included. And that circular was placed before the law committee for a final go-ahead. This draft circular being pending is not available or could not be relied by the taxpayers. However, I think if the 65% of the audience who said that this value is to be included do place reliance of the draft circular or pursue this draft circular, that percentage would definitely reduce. Now, coming back to the ruling which came in case of Santosh Distributors. So while the GST Council stated or directed the officers to stay put for now, not to raise any recovery, the ruling, advance ruling, the issue raised before the AAAR authority, and they said that the discount was not pre-established. The agreement merely refers to a discount and there was no parameter. The distributor had no control over the quantum of discount, and therefore the discount cannot be reduced from the value. This part we say is to a large extent right and needs to be seen on the facts of the case whether the discount, the pre-communication of the discount can be established or not. However, in these facts, if let us say the pre-communication was not established, in that case, the manufacturer cannot issue a GST credit note to the distributor. This part of the ruling, we don't have a problem or we agree. However, the last part which the ruling said is that the discount which is reimbursed by the principal manufacturer qualifies to be a third-party consideration and exigible to GST. This is a tricky issue because in this case, all the retailers, distributor, dealers who are getting a discount reimbursement or who are giving a discount because they know they'll be getting a subsequent discount from the manufacturer, the valuation would get challenged. And now, to everyone's surprise or just updating everyone, there's even an Australian ruling on the same point, which is in line with the Santosh Distributor AAAR. The ruling states that since the amount is being compensated by the manufacturer and it is after the sale transaction, this amount would be considered as an additional consideration. However, in our view, both this ruling of Santosh Distributors or this Australian ruling in the case of AP Group, they missed one point that they are treating these two transactions of whether it's a discount or an additional consideration independently. One needs to see it in tandem. And if, let us say, this commercial credit note of 150, this is a valid discount provided by the manufacturer to the distributor, then it cannot simultaneously qualify to be an additional consideration. And that is what the true nature of the transaction, a discount given by the manufacturer and not an additional consideration. Having said this, we believe that this AAAR now would open a Pandora box and would create disputes for industries across automobile, FMCG, consumer durable, and any other industry wherein these discounts are given. This ruling would bring a doubt in the mind of the department and they may start issuing notices to taxpayers for this. Let's hope the draft circular is finalized soon by the GST Council and issued. So this was our discussion on post-sale discount. Now we'll be briefly discussing other important rulings which have come during the last month. First, again, a very important ruling has come on classification on seat parts. That is the Suzuki Auto Component Supreme Court order. In this, the Supreme Court dismissed the application SAP filed by the department on classification of seat parts. So since it's a dismissal order, it's important to understand what the SESCHAT said. SESCHAT said that the part of the seats are covered or classified under heading 9401. The reason why they said is that 9401 is specifically covers seats by nomenclature. So while they said that note 2 of the relevant section note of parts of automobiles, while they do not exclude seat, if a part is covered specifically by name in another heading, it would remain to be covered there. And the SESCHAT also referred to the explanatory notes of heading 8708, which says that, and which takes an example of seat part in fact, that let us say seats, window panes or some other articles. Since they are covered by name in some other heading, they'll remain to be classified in that heading and will not be covered under part and accessories of motor vehicle or part of accessories of two-wheelers by under 8708 or 8714. Why this ruling is very important is that this order has come post the Westinghouse decision. So in a couple of weeks, we'll be holding a detailed webinar on Westinghouse. We'll be discussing the intricacies of this. But this gives a ray of hope to the taxpayers that there is a possibility to distinguish Westinghouse and state that the classification of parts would remain in other heading and not under 8708. Because 8708, it usually attracts a higher rate of custom duty, a higher rate of GST. Therefore, taxpayers also are attempting that it can get classified under other headings if legally valid, and this ruling would go a long way in supporting that. The next ruling, another interesting ruling, is on interest of levy of belated cash payment. So the facts of this case was that petitioner availed some ITC, and that ITC was alleged as wrongly availed. Petitioner said, fine, I'll reverse the ITC, but I'll reverse partly through cash because he had inadequate ITC balance and balance through ITC. Now, the ruling, one very important point which we have been focusing time and again is, if you have to levy interest, there has to be a specific provision. Now, if you guys see section 50 subsection 3, it very briefly states that interest under section 40, in case of 4210, that is mismatch, or 4310, that is again mismatch, interest can be levied. However, there is no specific provision for wrongly availed ITC. So the decision said that to the extent of credit component, no interest can be levied because 42 can be applicable only in case of mismatch and not in other cases. Then they said that interest is compensatory and therefore for the cash element, interest would be leviable. So again, highlighting that for the first part, for the first 2 points, we believe the High Court has correctly held that interest can be levied. 42 section deals with mismatch, and the relevant section 50 subsection 3 refers to only interest in case of mismatch. And the second part we don't agree because there are other Supreme Court judgments which have said that there has to be a specific provision for interest. So if we read section 50 threadbare, we will not find any provision for section mismatch of ITC or for wrongly availed ITC. Therefore, even if a taxpayer has wrongly availed ITC, he can very well refer to this judgment and state that there is no interest liability on him. Next is on intermediary service. Again, I'll say an industry-wide issue. So in this case, Airbus India, they were giving procurement operation services to their foreign entity. And they were actually dealing with the vendors, analyzing the parts, giving quotations and helping Airbus India finalize the vendors. Then Airbus France used to get procurements directly from Indian parties. The question on the ground was because our agreement with the France entity is on principal to principal basis. We cannot be intermediary because intermediary is an agent. In this case, the advance ruling said that while your agreement with France is on principal to principal basis, it is not relevant to determine intermediary, and rightfully so. You guys can very note that when the intermediary refers to an agent, they don't refer to vis-a-vis the principal. They refer that when you are dealing with the third parties. So in this case, let us say when Airbus India would be dealing with the Indian vendors, they would be dealing as a representative or an agent of the France entity and not as a principal that I want to buy goods. So vis-a-vis the Indian suppliers or Indian customers, they need to be agents and not vis-a-vis France entity. Then they acknowledge that yes, the transaction actually is relating to provision of supply by Indian vendors to France entity, and therefore it qualifies to be an intermediary. In our view, the ruling is correct, and they have rightly interpreted the relationship of agency between which parties it needs to exist and what bouquet of services would qualify to be intermediary. Now coming into another ruling, advanced ruling of CHEP India. In this case, the Karnataka unit was transferring assets on lease to other units in other states. The question was whether this transfer is supply of the assets or is it provision of lease service. The ruling rightly held that it's the provision of service. While these units are stated in different states, this asset transfer is not control and possession transfer to the units in other states. It's only that the goods have been given on lease, and after completion of lease, they will be brought back. So they said that it's a provision of lease service. Because it's a provision of service and goods are being transferred, they need to be sent on lease and delivery challan will be issued in this case. And since the recipient units are eligible to avail full ITC of the lease rentals, any value can be adopted for leasing services. Moving to the last judgment of High Court, and a very interesting one again. In this case, the High Court accepted that, let us say, the monthly contributions which you take from members. Let us say in a particular case it is 10,000. So the question looming, Raj, over these associations was whether GST is to be paid on 2,500 or entire 10,000. And why did this question arise was because there was an exemption up to rupees 7,500. So the High Court said that the exemption notification uses the words up to. Therefore, only contribution in excess of 7,500 is liable to be taxed. The circular they was issued which said that in case of collection of 10,000, entire 10,000 is to be taxed. The court held that the circular is against the express language of the exemption notification. And even if the, let us say, contribution is 10,000, only 2,500 would be taxable. Now, in this case, there was another issue which was there, which was whether association or member becomes different legal entities or not. The Supreme Court under service tax had analyzed and held that no, they will not become separate entities. But recently in the Finance Act, you must be knowing that the CGST Act was amended, that too retrospectively, stating that between association and members, between society and members, any activity would be deemed to be supply. So in this case also, we will not be surprised that they bring in another retrospective amendment to state that this exemption notification should be read as always being taxing an amount, entire amount of 10,000 and not only 2,500, that is above 7,500. So this is it for other rulings. Now covering the synopsis of what we discussed or the takeaway of the sessions. I think the two key highlights of the session can be, one, the post-sale discounts, the ruling of Santosh Enterprises, whether that would bring in another another Pandora box, it would bring in further disputes or not. And second is the extension of limitation period. Because the circular is so cryptic, so and it says that it would not be applicable to original proceedings. We believe it is just opening another floodgate of litigation, and the taxpayers and the authorities would then again be in a challenge of whether Supreme Court order would proceed, how the circular is interpreting the order, and these things. So thank you everyone. Thank you for joining.